Amazon feels like magic from the outside, like the world finally became effortless and fully under control. You click a button and something shows up at your door almost instantly, sometimes even faster than you expect it, like reality itself has been compressed into convenience. No delay, no struggle, no visible human effort in between the process. Everything just flows smoothly, like it was always meant to work this way. It feels clean, automatic, and perfectly designed for modern life where patience has slowly been replaced by instant access. But that illusion hides a very uncomfortable question that most people never stop to think about. Who actually makes this magic possible behind the scenes where no customer is watching? Because packages don't move themselves and speed doesn't appear out of nowhere on its own. Humans are the ones absorbing the pressure of that instant delivery promise every single second of the day. Every click you make, every second you save as a customer, is taken from someone else's physical effort somewhere else in the system. Deep inside massive warehouses, people are racing against time they don't control, only respond to. The entire system is designed so perfectly that you forget it even has workers behind it. And that is the real trick: invisibility at scale, where effort disappears from sight but never disappears in reality. The more seamless it feels on your screen, the more intense and demanding it actually becomes behind the curtain. What looks like simple convenience is actually controlled exhaustion organized into a global machine. And once you see that pattern, it becomes impossible to unsee it again. Inside Amazon's system, workers are completely invisible to the end customer. And that invisibility is not an accident, but a carefully built structure. Packages move through the system like they are part of a digital flow, almost like they exist in a world where humans are no longer needed. But in reality, every single item is touched, lifted, scanned, sorted, and moved by real human hands across massive warehouse floors. These workers do not appear in ads, brand messages, or customer experiences, even though they are the foundation holding the entire system together. They exist in the background of speed, hidden behind layers of logistics, software, and automation language that makes everything feel effortless. And because they are invisible, their pressure also becomes invisible, even though it grows heavier every single day. Every promise of same-day delivery, or next-day arrival, quietly pushes urgency downward into warehouse floors and shifts. The system is designed so that the customer never feels delay, even if workers are constantly feeling acceleration without pause. That creates a strange imbalance where comfort is concentrated on one side, while pressure is pushed entirely to the other side. And as the company expands globally, that imbalance does not reduce, it multiplies across regions and shifts. The machine looks fully automated from the outside, but inside it is powered by thousands of human bodies moving under continuous time pressure. You don't see their faces when you click order, but you feel their speed in every delivery timeline. And the faster the promise becomes, the heavier the human load behind it quietly grows in the background. It is invisible labor transformed into visible convenience, without most people ever realizing the trade taking place. Step inside an Amazon warehouse and the atmosphere changes instantly, almost like entering a completely different version of reality that operates on its own rules. It doesn't feel like a normal workplace where people work at human rhythm. It feels like a controlled system built entirely around motion, tracking, and constant output. The buildings are massive and endless, filled with rows that stretch far beyond what the eye can comfortably follow. There is constant noise from machines, scanners, carts, conveyor belts, and human movement that never truly stops or slows down. Workers move through this environment not at their own natural pace, but at a pace dictated by systems they cannot fully see or question. Every action they take is tracked, recorded, measured, and compared against expected performance standards in real time. Even a small slowdown, a short pause, or a moment of hesitation can feel like something the system silently registers and evaluates. Silence does not really exist in this environment, only repetition, rhythm, and continuous scanning of items across endless shelves. Breaks are technically there, but they feel shorter than what the human body actually needs to recover properly. The pressure is not always spoken by managers directly. It is embedded into the structure of the system itself. Screens, scanners, and performance targets become silent reminders that speed is always expected, never optional. And over time, workers begin adjusting their movement, breathing, and even thinking patterns just to survive the pace of the environment. The job slowly stops feeling like work and starts feeling like endurance testing on repeat. And endurance always has a limit. even if the system refuses to acknowledge it exists. What makes this system even more intense is that there is no single human boss controlling every moment in the traditional sense anymore. Instead, there is something far more constant, far more silent, and far more emotionally disconnected running the entire operation from behind the scenes. An algorithm decides how fast work should move, how many items should be processed, and how performance is evaluated across every shift in real time. It does not understand fatigue, pain, stress, or human limitation because it was never designed to recognize anything emotional or biological. It only understands numbers, patterns, efficiency metrics, and output that must continuously improve over time. If a worker slows down even slightly, the system notices instantly through data that updates constantly across the network. If performance drops, expectations adjust automatically without conversation, without warning, and without any human explanation. There is no negotiation, no discussion, and no emotional context built into how decisions are made at that level. It feels like working under something that is always watching but never listening, always measuring but never understanding. That creates a psychological pressure that is harder to describe than physical exhaustion, because it follows you even when you stop working. You are not just working against time anymore, you are working against a system that constantly recalculates your worth based on speed. And that system never sleeps, never pauses, and never forgets previous performance patterns. It continues running even when workers are off shift, updating expectations for the next day automatically. Over time, that creates a feeling that you are always behind, even when you are doing everything correctly. And that feeling becomes part of the job itself. Speed inside Amazon is not just a business goal or operational target, it starts to feel like a belief system that everything inside the company revolves around. Every layer of the structure is built around one core idea that faster is always better, no matter what the cost or consequence might be. From the moment a customer clicks an order to the final moment of delivery, everything is measured in time saved or time lost. And over time, speed stops being just a metric on a dashboard and starts becoming pressure that defines the entire working environment. Workers are not simply asked to complete tasks, they are pushed to match a rhythm that never slows down or adjusts for human limits. The faster the system becomes, the less room there is for mistakes, pauses, or natural human recovery. Even thinking too long about a task can start to feel like falling behind invisible expectations built into the system. In that environment, slowing down begins to feel like failure instead of something normal or necessary for human performance. The problem is that humans are not designed to operate at constant acceleration without rest or variation. They need recovery, unpredictability, and moments of pause to function properly over time. But this system removes almost all of that natural rhythm and replaces it with machine-like consistency. And when humans try to match that machine rhythm for too long, something inside them slowly begins to break without immediate warning. Not in a dramatic moment, but in a gradual buildup of exhaustion and pressure. And that breaking point often never appears in official reports or performance charts. It appears in people quietly, long after the system has already moved on. Inside this system, people slowly stop being treated as individuals and start becoming sets of numbers on a screen. Everything is converted into measurable data points like speed per hour, items processed per minute, and efficiency scores tracked constantly. And numbers do not feel tired, numbers do not experience pain, and numbers do not need rest or emotional support. So over time, the system begins treating humans in the same way it treats numbers, as inputs that must be optimized. This shift is not always intentional or openly declared, but it happens structurally through design and pressure. Once that shift begins, expectations also begin to change without anyone clearly announcing it. Humans are gradually expected to behave like machines because they are being measured like machines every single day. But machines do not have emotional limits, and humans do, which creates constant tension between expectation and reality. When someone falls behind, it is not always seen as human fatigue, it is seen as underperformance in data terms. And that data does not explain context or personal struggle, it only shows output levels. Over time, workers start internalizing these numbers as a reflection of their own value. That is where pressure becomes personal instead of just professional, because once performance becomes identity, every slowdown feels like personal failure. And that is one of the most silent but powerful parts of the entire system. The hardest part of this system is not always the physical labor, but the mental pressure that never fully leaves even after the shift ends. Knowing that every second is tracked creates a constant awareness that never really switches off. Knowing that speed defines performance creates a background anxiety that follows every movement. Even when a worker is doing their job correctly, there is always a feeling that it might not be enough. That feeling builds slowly over time, not in sudden breakdowns but in repeated exposure to pressure day after day. It becomes part of routine thinking, part of how decisions are made during work hours. Eventually, even rest does not feel fully restful because the mind is still carrying the structure of urgency. This is where the system becomes more psychological than physical, because the body may stop working after a shift, but the mental rhythm of speed continues inside the mind. Workers begin to feel like they are always slightly behind, even when they are meeting expectations. And that feeling does not come from one event, but from continuous repetition of measured performance. Over time, the system stops feeling external and starts feeling internalized. It becomes something that lives in thought patterns, not just workplace conditions. And that is where pressure becomes most difficult to escape, because it is no longer only around you, it starts to feel like it is inside you. Behind every fast delivery is a slower human reality that rarely appears in public view or customer experience. There is fatigue that does not show up in tracking systems, stress that does not appear in performance reports, and exhaustion that accumulates quietly over long shifts. Workers adapt in different ways. Some push through, some leave, and some simply try to survive the pace day by day. But no one stays unchanged after extended exposure to that kind of environment, because systems built on constant speed do not only take time from people, they take energy, focus, and long-term physical endurance. And when energy is continuously taken without full recovery, something eventually has to give. It does not always happen in dramatic breakdowns or visible collapse. Sometimes it happens quietly as burnout that builds over months or years. Sometimes it shows up as emotional distance from work that used to feel manageable. And sometimes it appears as simple acceptance that this level of speed is normal, even when it is not. That normalization is perhaps the most powerful effect of the system, because once pressure becomes normal, it stops being questioned. And once it stops being questioned, it continues without resistance. That is how systems like this sustain themselves over time. Not only through technology but through human adaptation. We always focus on how fast something can be delivered, how quickly it can arrive, and how soon it can reach our hands. But we rarely stop to ask what kind of system is required to maintain that level of speed consistently. What kind of pressure is necessary to keep millions of packages moving across global networks every single day without delay? And what kind of human effort is hidden behind something that appears so effortless on the surface? Because convenience is never truly free, it is just redistributed across different parts of the system. Most of that cost is moved away from the customer's view and placed into spaces they never directly see. That distance is what keeps the illusion intact. But once you understand that structure, the simplicity of ordering something online becomes more complicated in thought. Every delivery starts to represent not just a product, but a chain of invisible labor. And every moment of speed starts to reflect pressure somewhere else. The question is not whether the system works, because clearly it does. The question is at what cost it works, and who is carrying that cost silently every day. And that is a question most people never ask, because the answer is not visible on the screen. Amazon is not just a company that delivers products quickly, it is a reflection of how modern convenience is structured at scale. Everything feels smooth, instant, and effortless from the outside, but that smoothness is built on layers of continuous human effort behind the scenes. The faster the system becomes, the more invisible pressure is required to maintain it. And that pressure does not disappear, it only changes location across different parts of the chain. What we call convenience is often just efficiency built on exhaustion we do not directly see. But once you see it clearly, it becomes impossible to ignore in the same way again. Every package becomes a reminder that speed always has a source, and that source is human labor. Every delivery timeline becomes a silent reflection of time pressure somewhere else. And the real story is not just about Amazon itself, but about what we choose to normalize as fast enough in modern life. Because behind every instant experience, there is always a slower human reality holding it together. And the final realization is simple but uncomfortable. We are not just using a system of speed, we are participating in it.